Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of our Lunchtime Linkup Series, where we speak with members of the DivInc community about how we're impacting the tech ecosystem with diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility as our guide. I'm your host, Sharice Luter. I'm the marketing director here at DivInc, and today we are at the tail end of our Meet the Founder series for our Sports Tech Cohort this spring 2022 here in Houston. And today I have Dustin McMahon, who is the founder of Local Sports Network. And I'm going to let Dustin go ahead and introduce himself, and then we'll get into the conversation. Take it away, Dustin.
Hey, hi, I'm Dustin from Local Sports Network. Born and raised small town, Southeast Texas, Southwest Louisiana. I've lived and traveled various parts of the world, but somehow found my way back to Texas and found myself doing work related to communities. Started as an educator, no, actually started in finance, then in education, then back to finance, ultimately to tech. And I like to work on problems that solve social needs. So yeah, that's really me in a very concise form.
So, okay, so you said teaching or education, then to finance,
Flip
then,
flip. So
oh,
finance, education, finance again. And
okay. And it seems like, in a way, you're back in education with Local Sports Network and what you all do. So, can you tell us a little about that?
yeah, so Local Sports Network, our goal is to strengthen ties between fans, athletes, teams, and brands at the high school level. If you think about high school sports as being kind of like the genesis for all of sports fandom, you've got a lot of people, a lot of teams, a lot of activity, but it's fairly fragmented. As a school, like coaches are coaches, but their job is becoming increasingly technical. So they're having to manage lots of tech platforms, and that's just not what they were trained to do. Schools have IT departments, but those IT departments focused on the academic side of the thing. So when a coach calls them and says, "Hey, our digital ticketing isn't working," the IT department says, "I don't know what to do with that." Flip it over to the fan side. Fans want to watch games, want to buy tickets, uh, want to be able to do things, interact with other fans, all the things you can easily do as a fan of a pro or college sports. But at the high school level, there isn't really one place you can go to do that. When schools do have digital tools in place, as a fan, you got to go here to stream, here to buy tickets, here to buy apparel. It's just a clunky experience. And so what we really do at Local Sports Network is we bridge that gap for fans and for schools, right? We offer an all-in-one platform that we manage on behalf of schools that allows fans to be able to buy tickets, watch games, talk to each other all in one place. And then on the backside, we bring in advertisers and sponsors to that world. And ultimately, our goal is to funnel money from those brands into the platform, into the schools, and back into, supporting the communities that the schools serve.
How did you come up? I mean, this is one of those moments where I feel like once you tell me what the problem is that you're solving, I realize, oh yeah, there was a problem. Almost like you had to present the solution for there to be recognition that there was a problem that needs to be solved. So how did you come to this? And then how did you figure out, well, how did you recognize the problem and then figure out that this was the solution?
Yeah, well, before I was an educator myself, my mom's an educator, 40 years. My stepdad's a coach, 30 some odd years, three-time state champion, right? So I was a kid who was spending all their free time either in the teacher's lounge or the coach's office, right? And when I wasn't supposed to be there. And then on the other side of my family, everybody's in the horse racing industry. And for whatever reason, coaches like to spend a lot of their free time at the racetrack. So I also got to see coaches as very social beings as well. So I grew up just really understanding how ultimately my customer for this project viewed the world.
Mhm.
And so that firsthand experience, growing up in those environments, and then ultimately going into them myself professionally as an educator and a coach, you know, I kind of knew what to expect when that was happening. What most people don't realize is most coaches leave the profession within the first 5 years because the workload is so unsustainable, right? Like it's you coach, you teach, and then you enter the same information into like 5 different systems over and over again, right? So it just eats up so much of your time. So having had that firsthand experience with all of that, I knew it was only a matter of time before I was going to work on this project. I had the idea for several years, but it wasn't until COVID hit where I saw an opening and an opportunity for people to be receptive to the offering, because this was all fringe stuff before COVID, and COVID made it, a necessity for
Right.
districts to operate in this way. So yeah.
And I mean, so far you've had really great success working with districts. I mean, you were telling us a little while ago about the number of districts that you already have connections with, including here in Houston, the HISD, which is one of the largest districts in the country. So I'm wondering, as you've been uh, working with these districts, but then also you're, doing, of course, fundraising, just like every other startup. I'm wondering what's been the difference working with or having to pitch a district, which is really your customer, compared to pitching related to that fundraising. Since you've been so successful, I just have to know the
No,
key.
no, no, not at all. So I think for me, interacting with schools, it's just relationships, right? Like
Mhm.
it started off with the first pitch was actually to my stepdad and his coaching staff, right? So, and from there, it's just people that you have warm relationships with. And I find that has actually taken us a very long way very
Mhm.
quickly. That we started with small schools in Texas and Louisiana, moved on to big schools in Texas and Louisiana. And then those big schools there introduced us to other big schools in other parts of the country. So that's taken off very quickly. But that's really just like relationships. When it comes to funders, what I find is an ability to help them understand, like, not only why the problem exists, why it hasn't been solved before, and why once we're there, we're the people who can make this thing happen on a mass scale. I think there's a misconception that it's very hard to, one, sell into schools, and then two, make money off of products related to schools. But the school districts we deal with at this point are the largest school districts in the country. Their budgets are billions of dollars. These are large enterprise clients. Our sales process looks exactly like an enterprise sales process. And so once investors are willing to take the meeting and sit down and be open-minded to hear what we see, they quickly realize that everything we're doing is exactly, no different than any sort of enterprise sale, with the caveat being that, we as a company now have relationships with some of the largest school districts in the country. So it's very straightforward for us to get into that sales process in ways that other startups who try to do this cannot.
Got you. And as you are progressing through the process of working with these, I mean, like you said, these are huge enterprises. What have been the challenges you've experienced? Is it just related to the onboarding? Is it really trying to connect with parents? What are the challenges you met, and how have you overcome those?
I'd say making all of the pre-existing vendors in the space play nice with each other. So
Ah,
yeah,
I
so
wasn't expecting that. Okay, go on.
yeah, so our schools have become more digital. Like, they say
Mhm.
yes to everybody, right? They just want things to solve the problems for their fan base.
Right.
And so, like, for example, with concessions, we're seeing schools try to take money through Cash App, right? Venmo. It sounds good initially, but when you think about, like, how does that work over the long term, it actually doesn't make sense. So the biggest thing for us is we work with school districts to align all of their vendors on a shared vision of operational success, and then
Mhm.
plug those vendors into our platform. That's the great thing about our platform. It's very flexible. If you
Yeah.
want to use us for streaming, great. If you want to use someone else for streaming, we can plug those inputs into our platform, right? And so we're just trying to get everybody onto, a common operating system. The vendors, however, have historically they've had no incentive to do that, right? Like, they make
Mhm.
the sell and they move on to making the next sell. But the tide is changing. We're getting to a place where school districts no longer want people to sell to them and leave them. They want a closer relationship. They know they're enterprise clients and they want to be treated like enterprise clients, right? So school districts are demanding that vendors interact with them differently, and it's taking vendors a little bit of time to pick up on that. And so that's probably been the biggest thing, is like, we'll sit down with a district and we're like, oh yeah, we can integrate X, Y, and Z and make all these things talk, because technically it is all feasible.
Right.
We'll talk to the people in charge of the companies who have been operating in a certain way for so long, they may or may not want to make that happen.
So you mentioned a second ago the streaming, and I think that has been one of the as a parent of small children and who do sports, and of course there's grandparents and extended family and all of that. I think the streaming part is one of the things that I latched on to immediately when I heard about how y'all are approaching streaming for the individual games in a different way
Mhm.
that really helps another problem that you're solving. Can you tell us a little about that technology?
Yeah, so we've built a proprietary streaming platform that uses AI powered cameras.
Hmm.
They automatically track all the action on the field with no camera operator. It's about 90% cheaper than the traditional form of hiring somebody to go out and record a game. And we can, by installing that camera in these facilities, capture everything that happens in that facility, games, practice, you name it. So where in the past folks could only stream, say, one or two games a week, we actually can cover all games, all sports for the entire season. And so that exposure piece is a really huge thing. It's really big. If you're on the JV boys basketball team or the freshman girl volleyball team, like, you want people to watch your games. You don't want to have to wait until you're varsity and maybe you're on a game of the week for your loved ones to be able to watch that. So for us, the ability to provide that blanket exposure across the district is huge. The other thing that we do is we do remote play-by-play. So we have a gig economy set up for broadcasters. So you may only hear that person once or twice for your particular district, but they're broadcasting games all day long across the country, right? And so what's great about that is we use the roster information to be able to call players by name. So you're not going to hear number 34 all game. You'll hear players' names actually be called during the game. And that for us is very important because we want everybody to get their own, individual, again, exposure for what they're doing. And so imagine now a world where after the game, you can go in and watch it as the athlete, hear yourself, like hear the people calling your name for the plays that you're doing, record that, share that on your social media. It's just a very different way of engaging with high school sports than what we've seen. A lot of other streaming providers, if they do offer some form of play-by-play, it's going to be slanted for one team versus the other. Ours is very neutral, right? We don't pick a home team for play-by-play. And again, the personalization isn't there, right? In addition to that, our streaming is 4K, so it's super high quality. Yeah, it's just broadcast quality streaming, pro level quality play by play, but
Yeah.
all for your high school athletes, all the way down to like I said, freshman, JV, up to high school, up to varsity.
I mean, the idea that, grandma in Los Angeles can watch the game in high quality, watch the game streaming, and then even, as working parents who can't make it, it's just there's so many ways in which people want to be present and enjoy the game and enjoy watching their players play. And I feel like that is the biggest solution that you're providing the parents. I know the ISDs and the school districts, of course, but I mean, that's an emotional problem that you're solving for parents in a way that um, I don't want to say it blows other things out of the water, but I mean, yeah. and go ahead, you're gonna say something.
No, yeah, I think that emotional problem that we're solving comes from a real emotional pain that we felt, right? Like the founding team, we are parents. We work a lot. Like we don't always get to go to our kids' activities. So we understand that and wanted to create something that again we would use ourselves. So it very much comes from that place of helping parents and family members and friends all tune in and feel as connected digitally as they would if they were there in person watching that game. Because what we also allow you to do, we have a chat feature. So when you're watching the game, you can actually chat with other people who are watching that game.
Know about that part.
Yeah. And then when you watch it on demand, because all our stuff is available on demand,
Right.
the athletes themselves can actually read the comments. So if you're literally cheering for an athlete when a big play happens, if they come back in and watch that game, they will literally see people cheering for them as they were making those plays.
I mean, you're working miracles over there.
Trying to. No, again, I think that is the beauty. Like high school youth sports in and of itself is so special.
Yeah.
So all we're doing is providing tools that shine a light on something that is already really amazing, right? Like I say this a lot. Like sports, the reason we love sports so much is because it's not just about what happens on the field, right? It's about a series of rituals and traditions related to family, identity, memory, and desire that play out over and over again, whether we're the athlete or the fan or the coach or anywhere else. Like that's what it's about. Like when we talk about strengthening ties, like this is how you do it. You literally try to create a digital community through which we can cheer for each other, through which we can share those highs, share those lows, and really bond in ways that sports helps us do.
Well said. Well, I'd like to talk a little about your experience with DivInc. I think a couple of founders have definitely put you in the category of the OG when it
You
comes
know exactly who you're talking about.
when it comes to the startup world in general, but definitely when it comes to being a founder and being a part of accelerators and just being in this space. And so I'd love to hear what your experience with DivInc has been like, and what has been these big moments for you, and those big takeaways.
Yeah, sure. So if they're gonna call me an OG, I feel like I got to go back and clarify all the stuff I glossed over earlier. So I'll be more specific. So I started my career with Merrill Lynch in Dubai. After when Hurricane Katrina hit, I moved back stateside, um, and was a teacher in one of the first schools to open in New Orleans after the storm. I did that through a program called Teach for America.
Mhm.
After that, started an education technology company to help charter schools recruit educators of color before moving on to be founding COO of a venture fund. It's actually Louisiana's most active early stage fund. And the biggest exit that fund has had to date was a food delivery company that was acquired by the owner of the Houston Rockets, a few years ago.
Yeah.
When that happened, I left and moved to Silicon Valley. Spent about 6 years there, advising early stage startups, doing a little bit of one-off investing. Was working on a thesis for a fund when I was diagnosed with kidney disease. So I spent a year doing dialysis, ultimately got a transplant, and then I had to spend 3 years just focused on my health.
Mhm.
So I went from being extremely active as a founder, investor, advisor in early stage startups to just having to sit and observe for 3 years. And
Mm.
so while observing, I felt like it was good for me because it helped me identify some bigger trends about what was happening in the space. But it also like lit a fire in me when I came back. Like I wanted to help other founders while also being a founder. Because I think we get told we should wait, right?
Mhm.
We don't have to wait. And so yeah, when I came back and I worked on this project, it was been super important to me to be able to share all of the experiences that I've had. As if you look at the stats, they say less than 1% of Black folks have raised money as a founder of a startup, and less than 1% of us has raised money as an investor. So as someone who's been on both sides of that 1%, I just feel like for me it's important to help other people, right? I think on a somewhat connected but not connected note, when I was diagnosed with kidney disease, the doctors told me that my health issues were directly related to the stress of my professional lifestyle. And so
Hmm.
when I look back at my career to that point, I felt like I'd done things that other people would say, wow, that's great. But at the end of the day, like we do all this stuff as founders so that we can reap the benefits. But if we're going about it in an unsustainable way, like like what's going to happen if you
Yeah.
get a big exit and then you die, right? Like, and that's literally what I was facing. And so for me, it comes from a very personal place of wanting to do a program like DivInc. One, as a founder, to get all the resources that you guys provide, because it's been amazing. I've done other programs, but DivInc feels like a family, and that's amazing. And then on the flip side, for me, also being able to share what I've experienced with other founders who look like me, when I'm used to being one of the only people who looks like me in the room. that is
Yeah.
also really, really amazing too. So yeah, it's kind of like this really great sweet spot where I'm learning a lot from people, but I'm also sharing a lot at the same time. And I don't know, it just feels really good. Honestly, it feels really good. So yeah.
Well, I think after you've run down all of that, you deserve the term OG. You've earned it. You should wear it proudly. But I love that you mentioned the the collaboration, that environment of collaboration that we try our hardest to create in the room where most of us have experienced being the only person in the room, and therefore we have to always be presenting. I
Mhm.
think is the best way to put it, and be able to let your guard down, leave your defenses at the door, and then be able to actually work on your company, of course, but also experience support, unabridged and unmitigated support.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think the other thing that I don't think people think a lot about is a lot of times founders have really big egos. And
Mm,
so even if you can help somebody out, folks don't always want to listen, right? And even if somebody can help you out, you might not always want to listen. But I don't feel like we have many of that in the DivInc space. Like I genuinely don't feel like there are egos that are driving decision making. And for me, that's probably the most fascinating thing being in this space where it is very much ego driven to
yeah.
feel to genuinely feel like all of us who are here understand that we are part of something bigger than ourselves and there is a collective responsibility to lift each other, right?
Mm,
We all learn something from everybody and their experiences, technical or not. And so for me, like that is the coolest part, right? Like I'm old, right? Like the first part of the OG is old, like old, right? Like I'm old. And so there are things that I learned from some of the younger people in the cohort, like on a daily basis, that are equally as fulfilling and giving. So that to me is what I like the most. It's the reciprocity, right? Like everybody equally gives, everybody receives. Like that is a very, very unique thing in the entrepreneurial space. I know it shouldn't be,
you're right.
it actually is like people giving for the sake of giving and wanting to share for the sake of sharing.
That feels so good to hear that that's been your experience and that's been your takeaway from, because we're so deliberate in creating that. So it's wonderful to know that on some level it's been a success.
Yeah,
And
yeah, and
yeah,
I'd also say like mentally, like like building a company is always going to be a grind, but
right.
like mentally, it is nice to go into a space where, you know, earlier you said like we don't have to perform, but also to feel like seen, like I
Yes.
like just seen as who you are, right? Like that to me is another amazing part of the DivInc program. The other thing I'll say is we're talking a lot about like community. Like when you actually talk about the programming itself,
Hmm.
like we joke a lot, we're like DivInc is a cheat code, right? Like if you look at the programming, there is a path that companies who find success follows. We don't always talk about what those are, but there are very concrete steps that you can take that will put you on that trajectory, right? DivInc does a really good job, in my opinion, of sharing those with people at every step through the process and really demystifying what it takes to get to the next level. Personally, I believe that, you know, founders who come from underrepresented backgrounds are the most entrepreneurial people on the planet. Like the ability to do more with less is innate entrepreneurial ability for a whole host of reasons. That doesn't always translate into formal entrepreneurial activity in the economic system that we have. I think DivInc does a good job of helping take people who are innately entrepreneurial and giving them some very specific like guideposts and stepping stones so that you can translate that entrepreneurial potential into economic reality in a way that again makes a difference in your life, the lives of the people that you employ, but also the broader community. So, yeah.
Look, I'm gonna start having you write my I'm gonna have you on every website page.
No, it's just true.
No, but,
It's the
and
truth. It's just
no,
it's what
I
it is.
it's just again, like, it we work so hard to make that happen and hope that we're doing it right. And so again, to hear that it is happening, it warms my heart. And I'm sure everyone who's on the DivInc team and our mentors, our coaches, our subject matter experts, and everyone knowing that it's working, it's happening. And yeah, so we are in the home stretch towards demo day on June 30th.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to make sure that we, as a community, find out how can we support you so that we're making sure that you're finishing strong, and then afterwards, we're still connected to you,
Yeah.
to your company, and part of your community.
Yeah. So we're growing like as a company. So while being in the DivInc program, we've signed 5 of the 10 largest school districts in the country, and another, I don't know, 3 or 4 in the top 30 outside of that, right? So we're growing. So we need people. Like we need people. We need staff, primarily around customer support or customer success. So we want people who will work closely with school districts to help them identify what some of these technical gaps are, solve some of those technical problems, help with the implementation of the hardware that we talk about that captures some of these games. Just, yeah, we need people who understand tech, understand sports, have a passion for communities. So yeah, definitely looking to hire more folks. DivInc has been really great to us in terms of helping us on our marketing side. Like our entire marketing team was sent to us from the DivInc community. So I'm going back again, asking for more. Outside of that, we're always fundraising. So I'm sure as we continue down that road, like, yeah, well, you guys will help us communicate that type of stuff out. And then
Yeah.
the third thing that I personally am working on is, again, speaking of my own experiences as a founder who's dealt with physical and mental health related issues over the course of my career, that's a personal passion. So
Mhm.
I'm working on a few projects around like founder health and well-being. Some of them will be written. And so as I continue to develop that, would love to share that with the DivInc community to see if there are any folks who, kind of want to reflect on those experiences with a like-minded group of folks who, want to create a safe space for us to talk about those topics, kind of like for us, by us as founders of color.
Oh, I'm excited about all of that. And so like we just put up on the screen a couple of minutes ago, you can connect with Dustin on LinkedIn, and then also visit the website to get on their newsletter, get connected, and then also if you're interested in finding out about career opportunities with them, please reach out. Um, I think the last thing that I wanted to talk about are is, and maybe you've already touched on it, but any exciting news that we can all kind of start cheering for you as we're leading into demo day. You mentioned working with additional school districts. Any other?
Yeah. Yeah.
Anything
So,
else?
yeah. So our staff has, when we started the program, our staff was 5. Our staff is now 12 coming out of DivInc. So we doubled our staff while in DivInc. Um, yeah, we're now in, I think, a quarter, so 25% of the 30 largest school districts in the country. So that's new. We're about to do a public launch with Houston ISD. So
Mhm.
coming in the middle of August, you'll be able to go in and watch all Houston ISD sports through us. Yeah, I'm trying to think what else.
What else? That's all.
We're working on a pilot to put high school sporting events back on the television through NBC Sports. So that's something that we just started to kick off. More details to be determined, but yeah, our vision is to be able to make it to where you can flip on your TV and just how you can watch your local pro team or college team, you can easily watch your local high school team. So yeah, those are probably, I say, the biggest things that are happening in our world. But yeah, we're just happy. Like honestly, like it's a great time. Like another piece of unsolicited advice. I know
Okay.
everybody's talking about like how crazy the economic downturn is going to be. If you got an idea, go work on it. Right? Like now is the time. Like now is the time. If you have an idea, go work on it. And if you want some help, somebody to bounce ideas off of, reach out. Love to hear. Love to hear from you.
Thank you so much, Dustin. Thank you so much for slicing out time in your schedule and just spending some time with us as a founder for DivInc, but also as I mean an OG. I'm sorry. Sorry, not sorry. But as I said, DivInc is hosting our 5G Sports Tech Accelerator Demo Day done in partnership with Verizon on June 30th. That's coming up really, really soon. And if you would like to join us here in Houston, just visit divinc.org/events and you'll be able to register for the in-person event. And we will also be streaming live on all of our social media. So if you're not in Houston, you'll be able to still watch us and join us in the celebration. Thank you again, Dustin. Thank you for spending some time with us. And we have just a couple more interviews coming up leading into Demo Day. So until next time, thanks for watching. Have a great day. Bye-bye.